The message had been simple, as always. Family meeting, 7 p.m. attendance required. I stared at the screen for a moment, the words sinking in like stones. I knew this wasn't going to be a casual dinner. No, this was a summons. I had learned long ago that my family didn't do casual. They did business, and everything was always about appearances. And now, after years of being the outsider, the one who never quite fit into their perfect world of executives and high-status professionals, I was about to walk back into that world once again. My hand hovered over the buzzer at the grand iron gates of the estate where I had spent my childhood. The sprawling driveway, the high walls, the meticulously kept gardens. It all looked so pristine, so perfect. It wasn't my world. It never had been. I wasn't the corporate lawyer or the tech CEO or the renowned surgeon. I was Alara, the self-made artisan jeweler, the one they never quite understood. A chime echoed through the intercom and the gates slowly creaked open, as if they were giving me one last chance to turn away. But I didn't. I couldn't. The house loomed ahead as I walked up the path, every step taking me closer to the judgment I knew was waiting inside. I had built my business from the ground up, made my own name, and still, I was never enough for them. I had learned to survive in their world, but I had never been part of it. I reached the front door and it opened almost immediately. My mother stood there, her perfect posture and cool expression like she'd just stepped out of a corporate boardroom. Her eyes briefly flicked over me, taking in my clothes, my look, everything that didn't fit the polished image she so carefully curated. "You're late," she said, her voice sharp, as if I'd kept her waiting for hours. I looked at the clock, 7:01, not that it mattered. "I'm here," I replied, keeping my tone neutral, though my stomach was in knots. I stepped inside, the cool air of the grand house hitting me like a wave. Every surface was spotless, every object meticulously placed, like this house was a museum, not a home. "Family meeting," my mother said, turning on her heel and walking toward the living room where my father and siblings sat. "Sit." I did. The others didn't even look up when I entered, their eyes glued to their phones or papers, as if they couldn't be bothered to acknowledge my presence. Celia, the corporate lawyer, sat with her back straight, her expression as unreadable as ever. Adrian, the tech CEO, was typing away furiously on his phone, his focus absolute, and Marcus, the surgeon, sat with his arms crossed, his face a mask of professionalism. And then there was my father, silent, stoic as ever. He didn't even glance in my direction, as if my presence didn't matter. But his silence spoke volumes. I sat across from them, feeling the weight of their eyes on me, though none of them actually looked at me. Finally, my father spoke, his voice as dry as dust. "We're glad you could join us." "Can someone just tell me what this is about?" I said, forcing my voice to stay steady despite the tension in my chest. My mother was the one who answered, her tone crisp and cold. "It's about your career, Alara. Your choices." She paused as if measuring her words carefully. "This family does not condone such untraditional paths. We've discussed it, and we've made a decision." A lump formed in my throat. I'd heard these words before, always wrapped in their familiar, suffocating package of judgment. I knew what was coming. I didn't have to be told to know I was the one about to be cast out. But this time, I wouldn't shrink. I wouldn't beg for their approval like I had in the past. "What decision?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "Your removal from the family trust," my father said, his tone impassive. "Your inheritance is revoked, as is any financial support from us. You no longer have a place in this family's future." I blinked, stunned into silence. For a moment, I couldn't process the words. I had known they never understood me, but to be cut off so completely, so coldly, it felt like the ground had just been pulled out from under me. "I see," I said, finally breaking the silence. I wasn't going to break down, not now, not in front of them. My mother didn't soften. "We're doing this for your own good, Alara. It's time for you to grow up. You've made your choices, now live with them." I met her eyes for a moment, her steely gaze locking with mine. I had spent my whole life trying to earn their approval, trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for me. I wasn't going to beg for scraps anymore. "I'll sign whatever you want," I said flatly, leaning forward. "But know this. This is the last time I'm coming back here." I stood, my heart pounding, and without another word, I left. But as the door clicked shut behind me, I felt something shift. A mix of anger and freedom coursed through me. For the first time, I wasn't their failure. I was free. 3 days later, I stood in the same living room, facing the same cold, sterile faces. It felt like a dream, like I was watching someone else live through it. But it wasn't a dream. This was real. I was here again, summoned by the same people who had just disowned me. But this time, I wasn't going to sit quietly. My mother, her back straight as always, gestured to the stack of legal papers on the coffee table in front of me. She had already signed her name at the top, her sharp penmanship marking the official severance of ties. My father, who had barely looked up since I walked in, was sitting behind the papers, his hands folded neatly in front of him. I could feel the weight of their judgment hanging over me like a dark cloud. "You understand what this means, don't you?" my mother asked, her voice a little too controlled. "You're no longer a part of this family's legacy. No access to the trust fund, no inheritance, no more support of any kind." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I knew what was happening and I didn't care. Instead, I reached forward, my fingers brushing the cold stack of documents. I glanced at the top sheet, reading the bold letters that confirmed what I already knew. I was being legally erased from their lives, removed, cut off, no longer a part of the family, just a name on a piece of paper, discarded like the last crumpled receipt at the bottom of a purse. "Sign it," my mother pressed, her voice colder than before. "This is what you've chosen." I could feel her eyes on me, waiting, testing. The silence between us stretched tight, and for a moment it felt like nothing else existed but her expectation. I glanced at my siblings, Celia, Adrian, and Marcus, all of them staring at me with indifference like this was just business, a transaction, a formality. The look in their eyes said it all. Good riddance. "You know this isn't personal, right?" Adrian's voice cut through the silence, his tone almost clinical. "It's just business. Nothing against you. Business. Everything with them was business. I knew that. But this wasn't just business. This was rejection. Cold, calculated, final." I turned my gaze back to the papers. "I understand," I said, my voice even. I reached for the pen, signing my name at the bottom of the page. It was done. No turning back now. I had just given up everything. My place in their world, my place in their family. And I didn't even blink. My mother gave a sharp nod as if she had expected no less. "Good. Now, we can move on." I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. I didn't even look at my father, who still hadn't said a word. He was too busy looking at the papers in front of him to acknowledge me. "Is that it?" I asked, my voice low but steady. "Am I just done? You've erased me and now I'm supposed to walk away just like that?" My mother's eyes flicked to my father, and for the first time I saw the faintest hint of hesitation in her gaze. She didn't like being questioned. She didn't like being challenged. "You've made your choices," she said stiffly. "Now it's time for you to live with them." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I could feel the finality of it, the way they were already dismissing me as if I never mattered, as if I was just another inconvenience they had to clear from their path. I turned to leave, but before I could step out the door, I heard my father's voice, quiet but unmistakable. "Don't come back here." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. The words stung more than I thought they would, but I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. "You made sure of that," I said quietly, more to myself than anyone else. The door closed behind me with a dull thud, and for a moment, I just stood there. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or angry, maybe both, but I didn't feel broken. Not this time. This was a turning point, a moment where I could finally breathe. I had just been cut off, yes, but now, for the first time, I wasn't their failure. I wasn't their disappointment. I was free. 3 days after the family meeting, I threw myself into my work. My little jewelry workshop, a cluttered but cozy space, became my sanctuary. It wasn't much, just a tiny room at the back of a building in a part of town most people wouldn't visit, but it was mine. The steady hum of the soldering iron and the rhythmic sound of my hammer against metal helped quiet my mind. I worked through the disappointment, through the hurt, through the sting of being rejected by the family I had spent my whole life trying to impress. The piece I was working on, a necklace made from reclaimed metal and raw, imperfect stones, was my most ambitious design yet. I was determined to finish it, to prove once and for all that I didn't need them, that I could succeed on my own without their validation. Mira, my best friend and business partner, dropped by around noon, as she often did when she wasn't tied up with her own work. She was the opposite of me, outgoing, extroverted, with a contagious laugh that could light up a room. Where I was quiet, she was a whirlwind. But despite our differences, we had always clicked. "How's the necklace coming along?" she asked, leaning against the counter, eyeing the metalwork with a critical but supportive glance. "Slow," I replied, carefully bending a piece of metal into shape. I can't stop thinking about the meeting, about everything. It's like the air is thick with their rejection. Mira raised an eyebrow, leaning closer to watch me work. "You mean your family's rejection?" I nodded, sighing. "Yeah, I don't know why it's hitting me so hard this time. Maybe because it feels final, like there's no coming back from it." She tilted her head, her eyes softening. "You don't need them, Alara. You've never needed them. You've built everything from scratch. They didn't see it, but you've got something bigger waiting for you." I smiled weakly, but the words weren't quite enough to push through the fog of doubt clouding my mind. Just as I was about to say something, Leo, our other partner and the business's official tech guru, burst through the door. "Guess what?" he said, practically bouncing on his heels. "What's up?" I asked, dropping my tools and wiping my hands on my apron. "The magazine," he said, practically glowing. "You've been featured. The innovator of modern sustainable jewelry. The article went live an hour ago and it's already going viral." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. "Wait, what?" Mira pulled out her phone, scrolling through a notification. "Oh my God, it's everywhere." Her eyes met mine, wide with excitement. "Alara, you're trending. Your work is everywhere, from small boutiques to luxury brand owners. Investors are already reaching out." The words seemed surreal, like they were coming from someone else. I stood there, a mix of disbelief and cautious hope swelling inside me. This was what I had been working toward. The breakthrough that could finally prove to the world and to myself that I wasn't just some small-time artisan. Leo grinned. "You've made it, Alara. I told you all that time working on your craft would pay off." I felt a rush of emotion, one I couldn't quite put into words. Relief, excitement, maybe even a bit of pride. But mostly, it was the feeling of finally being seen. For the first time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground, like I could finally breathe without the weight of my family's expectations hanging over me. I I can't believe it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "This is really happening." "You earned this," Mira said, her voice firm but gentle. "All that hard work, all the sleepless nights, you deserve every bit of it. Don't forget that." I nodded, my chest tight with emotion. It felt like the world was opening up, like there was a place for me in it beyond the narrow, suffocating world I had grown up in. "I'm going to call Leo, the investor we've been talking to," Leo added, pulling his phone out again. "He's been waiting for this moment. We're about to take this thing to the next level." I couldn't help the smile that crept onto my face. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. This was my chance to prove that I didn't need their approval. It was time for me to take the lead. "Go ahead," I said, my voice stronger now. "Let's do this." As Leo made the call, I stared at the necklace I was working on, the piece I had almost abandoned in the chaos of my emotions. But now, looking at it, I saw something new in it, a reflection of everything I had been fighting for. I wasn't just creating jewelry anymore. I was building something bigger than myself. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The phone buzzed on my workbench, the vibration making the metal tools jitter. I wiped my hands on my apron and picked it up, already dreading who it might be. "Blocked unknown numbers," my caller ID flashed. I sighed and slid my thumb across the screen. "Hello?" "Alara," came my father's voice, cold but unmistakable. "It's your father." I didn't flinch. I didn't even feel the rush of anger that used to come with hearing his voice. Instead, a strange, almost detached calm settled over me. "What do you want?" I asked, not even bothering to mask the exhaustion in my tone. I He cleared his throat as if forcing himself to get the words out. "We'd like to reconnect." My heart skipped a beat, but not from surprise. No, it was the kind of cold certainty that comes from knowing exactly what this was about. "You want something?" I said flatly, almost amused by the audacity of it. "Not like that," he insisted, but the hesitation in his voice gave him away. "You've had your success, your recognition, and well, maybe it's time we reconsider things." I rolled my eyes, the sound of their voices, their desperation already grating on my nerves. "Is this your idea of an apology? Because it's not working." There was a long silence on the other end. I could almost hear him calculating his words. Finally, he spoke again, softer, almost pleading. "You've been successful in your own right, Alara, but your family and family matters. I felt the tightness in my chest loosen just slightly. I had worked too hard for this, fought too long to get here, for them to walk back in like nothing had happened. I wasn't a charity case. Not anymore. I've learned to manage just fine without your family matters, I replied coolly, but I appreciate you reaching out. Elara, he said, his voice turning more urgent. We made a mistake. Your mother? She's been beside herself. The whole family's been, well, it's been difficult without you. I couldn't help it. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. So now you want to be a family again after everything? After you cut me out of your lives like I was a business mistake? Listen to me, he said, his voice rising slightly. I'm not asking for anything from you. I'm asking you to come back, to try to be part of this again. It's just hard to watch you move forward without us. I thought about that for a moment. It's hard to watch you move forward without us. The truth was, I didn't need them, not anymore. I had moved forward in ways they would never understand. The business was thriving. I was respected in my industry, and the recognition from that design magazine was just the beginning. But as the words hung in the air between us, I realized something. For all their faults, for all the years of rejection, they were still family. It was a bitter truth, one I hadn't been ready to face. I'm doing just fine on my own, I said, my tone firm. You and Mom, you've made your choices. I made mine, and this doesn't change anything. There was a pause, a long one, and when he spoke again, his voice sounded smaller, as if the weight of his words had sunk in. You're really going to leave us behind? He asked, a hint of disbelief in his voice. Not leaving, I corrected him. I'm moving forward. For once, I'm not carrying the weight of your expectations with me. Are you sure about this, Elara? He pressed, his voice softer now, almost like he was begging me to reconsider. We've already lost so much time with you. Time doesn't matter if it's always been about control, I said, my voice hardening again. I don't need to prove myself to you anymore. Not now. Not ever. For the first time in the entire conversation, there was no response. Just silence on the other end of the line. I felt the finality of it, felt the end of an era. The family I had once tried so hard to fit into was no longer my responsibility. I'll take care of the business, I said, breaking the silence. You do what you need to do, but don't call me again. And with that, I hung up. I sat back in my chair for a moment, my hand still gripping the phone. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't carrying their weight. I was free. But the doorbell rang just as I was about to let out a breath. I walked to the door expecting more of the same, the family reaching out again, trying to worm their way back in. But when I opened it, it wasn't my parents. It was a message, a simple letter on crisp, expensive stationery. I unfolded it with a deep, resigned sigh. It was from Celia, my sister. Elara, we need your help. The family business is in crisis. Your expertise could save us. Come to dinner at 7, please. It's time to make things right. I stared at the letter for a long time. My heart thudded in my chest, a mix of disbelief and curiosity. They wanted my help now, after everything. I tossed the letter onto the table, my eyes narrowing. I wasn't their last resort, not anymore. But as I turned away, something inside me stirred. Was I really going to walk away from everything they had built? Was I going to let them fail because of their own pride and arrogance? The phone buzzed again. This time it was Mira texting. Just saw the article. Big things are coming, Elara. Are you ready? I let the question sit for a moment. I was ready. But was I ready to face them? Ready to walk away from the family that had rejected me? Or did they have one last card to play? I had all the time in the world to figure it out. But for now, I was focusing on my next step forward. It was a strange kind of dinner, not the kind of family gathering I ever imagined attending after what had happened. But here I was, sitting at the same polished oak dining table, facing the same people who had made me feel invisible for years. The only difference was that tonight I wasn't invisible. Tonight I was the one they needed. The room was colder than I remembered. The walls, lined with dark mahogany shelves and fine art, seemed to tower over us. The faint smell of expensive wine hung in the air, and there at the head of the table sat my father, his eyes barely meeting mine. You're here, my father said, breaking the silence, his voice flat and matter-of-fact. That's something. I stared back at him, not caring that my heart was racing, not caring that I was still angry, hurt, and confused by everything they had done. This wasn't about the past anymore. This was about the present. My mother, seated beside him, gave a small, clipped smile. We're glad you could make it, Alara. It's good to have the family back together. The words were insincere, I could tell. But it didn't matter. I wasn't here to reminisce or reconcile. I was here because they had no other choice. We need your help, Celia said, cutting to the chase. Her voice was cold, controlled, just like her. The company is failing. We've been holding it together with band-aids, but now it's at a breaking point. We can't do this without you. I leaned back in my chair, my arms crossed. And why exactly would I help you? I asked, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. After the way you treated me? After everything you've taken from me? Celia didn't flinch. She was too used to controlling the room. Because you're the only one who knows how to salvage what's left. You've made a name for yourself. We need your creativity, your eye for design. We've been doing things the old way for too long. She glanced at Adrian, who sat silently beside her, eyes darting between the two of us. We're offering you control, full control. You'll have your say in everything. We'll even put you in charge of the rebranding. Rebranding. The words stuck with me. I had spent my entire life building something from scratch, but now they wanted me to fix the mess they had created. Part of me wanted to walk away, to keep my distance and let them drown in their own incompetence. But there was something inside me, something I wasn't ready to let go of. It wasn't about family anymore. It was about power, about proving to myself that I didn't need them, that I could take their broken company and turn it into something that worked on my terms. Full control, huh? I said, raising an eyebrow. And what do you want in return? My father spoke this time, his voice gruff and reluctant. We want you to restructure the company. We want you to lead it into the future, but we also want you to bring the family back together. There's more at stake than just money, Alara. Really? I said, the words sharp as glass, because it seems like all you ever cared about was the money. Don't be dramatic, my mother cut in, her voice clipped. We want to make things right, but we can't do it without your help. I stared at her, my eyes narrowing. What's in it for me? I asked. I've worked hard to get where I am. I didn't need any of you to do it. You'll get the resources you need, Adrian chimed in, finally speaking. The funding, the investment, everything. And once it's back on track, you'll get the credit. You'll have what you've always wanted. Respect. Respect. It was the word that had been just out of reach for so long. They didn't respect me. They didn't even care enough to see what I was capable of. But if I played this game right, if I did what they wanted and fixed their mess, I could finally prove to them, and to myself, that I didn't need their validation. I would take everything they had and reshape it into something that was mine. Fine, I said, my voice steady and calm. I'll help, but there are terms, my terms. I will be in charge. I will make the decisions. And I don't want to hear any of your opinions unless I ask for them. They all exchanged looks, but none of them argued. I had them right where I wanted them. The silence was thick as I laid out my plan. I'll take over the company, but I'll need to make major changes. I won't be dealing with outdated strategies or your old methods. This needs to be a fresh start. We'll focus on sustainability, innovation, things that actually matter. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand, silencing her. You wanted me to fix it, so let me fix it. If you want to stay involved, you'll step back. You'll trust me to do it my way. They were silent for a long time. My father finally nodded, a reluctant agreement. Fine, but remember, this is about the family. No, I said, standing up and looking at each of them, my eyes cold. This is about me, and if you can't accept that, then I'm done. I turned and walked toward the door, the weight of their eyes heavy on my back. As I reached for the handle, I turned to face them one last time. I'll let you know when I've made things right. But until then, don't contact me. I've got work to do. The door shut behind me, and I felt something shift in the air. This was my moment. I wasn't their disappointment anymore. I wasn't their backup plan. I was in charge now. Days passed, and I threw myself into the work. The company was a mess. Outdated systems, archaic methods, and a staff that had long since given up on innovation. But I knew what needed to be done. I had a vision, one I'd carried in my head for years, even when I wasn't allowed to share it. The business was mine now, but it wasn't just about taking over. It was about creating something that would make them regret ever dismissing me. Every meeting, every plan, every late night in the workshop was a step closer to proving to myself, to everyone, that I didn't need them. I was better without them. I worked hard, too hard, but it paid off. Our designs began to attract attention, and the investor pool started growing. The buzz around sustainable jewelry was becoming more than just a trend, it was a movement. And I was at the forefront of it. I was sitting at my desk late one evening reviewing contracts for a new partnership when the phone rang. I wasn't in the mood for more calls from my family, but the number was unfamiliar, and something about the moment made me answer. Alara? The voice on the other end was calm, collected, and strangely familiar. This is David Knight. I represent the National Museum of Decorative Arts. My heart skipped. I couldn't quite place the name, but my curiosity was piqued. Yes? I said, trying to sound more composed than I felt. We've been following your work with great interest, and we'd like to extend an invitation for you to showcase your collection in our upcoming exhibition on sustainability in modern art. We've selected a handful of top-tier artists to present, and your innovative approach to jewelry design fits perfectly with the theme. I blinked, the words sinking in slowly. You want me to be part of the exhibition? Yes. We believe your work has the potential to change the way the world views sustainable art, and we'd love for you to be a featured artist. We can discuss the details in person, but the offer is yours if you're interested. I could feel my pulse quicken as the magnitude of what was happening sank in. The National Museum of Decorative Arts? The museum? I had barely dared to dream this big. Yes, I stammered, surprised at how breathless I felt. I'd be honored. I'll get back to you right away. After I hung up, I sat there for a moment, stunned. This was the kind of opportunity I'd worked my whole life for. It wasn't just recognition, it was validation. The kind I never thought I'd get from my family, and certainly never thought I'd get from the world they had always turned their backs on. Mira, who had been working late in the shop as usual, popped her head into my office, her eyes wide. Who was that? You won't believe it, I said, my voice still shaky with excitement. The National Museum of Decorative Arts just invited me to be a featured artist in their sustainability exhibition. Her face lit up like a firework. No way! That's huge, Alara. This is it. This is everything we've been working for. I nodded, still reeling. But then a thought crossed my mind. I had made it this far on my own, and now, as the world started taking notice, my family, who had rejected me, mocked me, and cast me aside, wanted to be a part of my success. They'd been silent for weeks, but I knew they were watching, waiting for me to slip, and I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. The phone buzzed on my desk, and this time I knew exactly who it was. My father. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me wanted to hear what he had to say. Alara, he began, his voice much more tentative than it had been before, we've been hearing good things about your work, your feature, in the museum. This is big. We want to congratulate you. I heard the faintest trace of regret in his voice. It made me wonder if he'd been waiting for this moment to speak up, to make things right. Thanks, I said coolly, though a part of me wanted to let him stew in his own guilt. But I'm fine, I've got it under control. I understand, he said, sounding almost flustered. We just wanted to reach out, Alara. Maybe, if you're willing, we could talk. See if there's a way for us to be involved. We could help you. My jaw clenched. Of course, now they wanted to help. Now that they saw I was worth something, now that I wasn't just a disappointment to them. I don't need your help, I said firmly. I've got everything I need right here. I've worked hard for this, and it's not about money or validation anymore. It's about the work, and the work comes first. So no, I'm not interested in involving you. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear my father processing my words. I see, he finally said. Well, if you ever change your mind, we'll be here. But again, congratulations. This is impressive. I could hear the defeat in his voice, the resignation. And for the first time, I didn't feel bad about it. I wasn't his burden to fix anymore. Thanks, Dad, I said, and then hung up without another word. I stared at the phone for a moment before leaning back in my chair, the weight of everything settling on me. The exhibition at the museum, the recognition, it was everything I dreamed of. But there was still one last piece to put into place. I had to make sure they knew I had moved on, that I was stronger without them. Mira knocked gently on my door, a wide smile on her face. Alara, this is your moment. Don't let anything or anyone take that away from you. I smiled back, my heart a little lighter now. I won't, I said, standing up and taking a deep breath. This is just the beginning. The phone rang the next day, its ringtone cutting through the quiet of my studio like a knife. I didn't even have to look at the screen to know who it was. I had been expecting this call for days, if not weeks. My family had been biding their time, waiting for the moment when they could worm their way back into my life. I almost didn't pick up. But something in me, some strange, stubborn pull, compelled me to answer. Hello, Alara. It was my father, his voice tight, almost apologetic. Dad, I said, my tone cool but steady. I didn't expect to hear from you again. We've had some time to think, he continued, the usual stoic edge of his voice softening as though he were trying to be human. It was almost amusing. I won't deny it. We made mistakes. I think we both know that. I leaned back in my chair, waiting for the inevitable. The words that would come next were always the same, no matter how they tried to dress them up. We've come to a decision, he said, and I could practically hear him preparing himself for the confrontation he knew was coming. Your mother and I, we want to make things right. We want to offer you something that should have been yours from the start. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued but still guarded. Go on, I said. We want to offer you a stake in the company, a real one. You can take full control and lead it the way you've been leading your own business, he said, the words hanging in the air like an unspoken challenge. You'll have what you've always wanted: respect, power, influence. I could hear the desperation in his voice, the unspoken plea that I would accept their offer, that I would come back and fix everything for them, just like I always had before. But now, the tables had turned. I wasn't the little girl they could manipulate with money or guilt. Do you honestly think I want to go back to that? I asked, my voice steady but cutting through the silence like a whip. After everything you've said, everything you've done, and the way you treated me, you think I'd come crawling back for a piece of your broken company? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could feel the weight of the words I had just thrown at him settling in, like the air between us had thickened with a tension that was impossible to ignore. You've built something, he finally said, his voice softer now, less commanding. And we see that. We see you, Alara. For the first time, we're seeing you for what you've become. You're the one who can save this company. You don't get it, do you? I asked, my voice firm. This isn't about saving the company. This is about me proving to myself that I can do this without you. I've built my business from the ground up without anyone's help, and now you want me to just walk back into your world and play by your rules? I don't think so. But Ilara, this is your legacy too, my father persisted. It's in your blood. Your grandfather built this company. You could be the one to restore it, to lead it into the future, into something that's more in line with what the world needs now. I felt a flicker of something inside me, something that was both pride and resentment, all tangled up in a knot. My grandfather had built that company, yes, but it wasn't my legacy. It was their legacy. And I was not going to be tethered to it anymore. I wasn't going to spend another minute stuck in their world, chasing after validation from people who would never see me as equal. I don't need your company, I said, my words final. I have my own path now. I'm already creating my own legacy, one that doesn't require your approval. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly, and for a moment I thought I heard a faint note of regret in his voice. But I wasn't going to be swayed, not this time. I'm sure, I replied, my voice unwavering. This isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about moving forward, without you, without all of you. There was silence on the other end of the line, and I knew he was processing what I'd just said. I knew he understood that I was no longer the daughter he could control with money and promises. I understand, he said finally. I won't call again. We've had our chance, and I can see that you've made your choice. But just know, Alara, we're proud of you, in our own way. I let out a breath, feeling the weight of the last few years lift off my shoulders, the burden of their expectations finally fading into the background. Goodbye, Dad, I said, and this time I meant it. There were no regrets, no what-ifs, just a door closing for good. And as I hung up, I felt something shift inside me. The anger that had burned for so long was gone, replaced by something else, something lighter, freedom. The door had closed on that chapter of my life, and now I was standing at the beginning of something new, something all my own. A year had passed since I cut ties with my family, and in that time, everything had changed. RM Nova, my company, my vision, was thriving. The sustainable jewelry line I had launched had exploded. The press, the investors, the recognition, everything had lined up, as though the universe itself had been waiting for me to take this step. But as much as I had told myself I didn't need their approval, the truth was that this success felt like more than just business. It was my answer to everything they had said I couldn't do. But tonight wasn't about the business. Tonight was about the family I'd left behind. The family I had rebuilt, not with blood, but with people who respected me, who saw me for what I had accomplished, not what I was supposed to be. I stood in the gleaming showroom of Aurum Nova, the space bathed in soft light. The open floor plan showcased an elegant blend of luxury and modernity. Sustainable materials lining the walls, pieces of my collections displayed in pristine glass cases, their beauty speaking for itself. It was the place I had dreamed of creating, and now it was more than just a dream. It was a reality. I ran my fingers lightly along the edge of a display case, lost in the quiet satisfaction of seeing it all come together. And then I turned to see my siblings walking through the door. Celia, the corporate lawyer, entered first. She was still in her sharp suit, the same calculated smile on her face that had never quite reached her eyes. Behind her was Marcus, the surgeon, with his usual air of indifference, his eyes scanning the space like he was visiting some art gallery, not a place of business. And last was Adrian, the tech CEO, looking a little out of place in a collared shirt that wasn't quite as crisp as his usual corporate attire. But the one who caught my eye the most was my father. His presence was quieter now, more subdued than I remembered. He wasn't the towering figure he used to be, the one who had always held the family together with his stoic presence. Now he just looked human, vulnerable even. He walked in slowly, as if unsure of where he belonged. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and for a moment no one spoke. We all stood there in the middle of the showroom, the silence hanging thick. I knew what they expected. They expected me to greet them with open arms, to welcome them back into my life after everything had been broken. But I had worked too hard, fought too long to get here. This was my world now, and I wasn't going to let them forget it. Finally, I spoke. "I'm surprised you came." My father cleared his throat, stepping forward. "We didn't know how to approach you, Alara," he said quietly, his eyes scanning the space, avoiding mine. "But we've watched you. We've seen how far you've come. And I guess we didn't realize how much you were capable of." I folded my arms, letting the words sink in. "You couldn't see it before. When I was trying to make you proud. When I was bending over backwards to fit into your world." I paused, the bitterness slipping through despite my attempts to keep it in check. "But now you want in, don't you? Now that it's all happening. Now that I've made it." Celia's eyes flicked between us, and she stepped forward, speaking before anyone else could. "Alara, we're not here to fight. We've made our share of mistakes. We've said things we shouldn't have. But we've learned. We've seen the work you've put in." Marcus spoke next, his voice calm but firm. "We can't change the past, but we want to be part of what you've built. We want to help, if you'll let us." I took a slow breath, glancing over at Leo, Mira, and the team. They were all standing by the back wall, watching but staying out of it. The decision was mine to make, as it always had been. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. My gaze moved from one face to the next, their familiar expressions twisted now by time, by the distance I had put between us. I'd been prepared for this. The apologies, the offers. But what I hadn't expected was the clarity in my own heart. I had come this far on my own, and I didn't need them to finish the job. But I also wasn't going to let them walk away without some kind of reckoning. I stepped toward them slowly, my eyes locking with my father's. "You want to be part of this?" I said, my voice low and firm. "Then you'll work for it. You'll earn it. I don't need charity, and I won't be your backup plan anymore. If you're going to be involved, you'll do it my way." I could see the flicker of understanding in their eyes. They had underestimated me once, but I wasn't the same person anymore, and I wasn't going to let them treat me like I was. My father gave a small nod. "What do you need from us?" "You'll step back," I said, my voice unwavering. "You'll let me lead this. You'll follow my vision, or you won't be part of it at all. If you can handle that, then we can talk. But if you think I'm going to turn this into a family project, you're wrong." The room was quiet for a long moment. It was as though they were all waiting for me to cave, to soften. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not this time. Finally, Adrian spoke. "You've built something incredible here, Alara, and if you're willing to let us in, we'll respect your terms." Celia followed suit. "We'll support your vision. You're the one who knows how to make this work. We trust you. My father's voice was the quietest of them all. We're sorry, Alara. We were wrong. And if you'll have us, we want to help. I looked at them, really looked at them for the first time in a long while. They had done a lot to me. They had rejected me when I needed them the most. But there was something different in the way they were standing now. Something fragile, something real. I exhaled, feeling the tension in my shoulders loosen. I'll give you a chance, but this isn't a free pass. You prove your worth, and maybe then we'll talk about real partnership. It was as close to forgiveness as I was willing to give. As I turned back toward the showroom, my siblings followed me, Marcus nodding to a design on the wall, Adrian pulling out his phone to start making calls. But it was my father who lingered a moment longer. He looked at me, his expression finally softer than it had ever been. I'm proud of you, he said, his voice quieter now, almost shy. I nodded once, not out of obligation, but because, at that moment, I finally felt like I was allowed to be proud of myself too.